So, good morning, everybody. How wonderful to be gathered here again like this. Taking a leaf out of Valerie's book, I'm going to start by just presenting these beauties and Margie, who gave them to us all. They've been with us throughout this retreat. They're really splendid and magnificent and marvelous. And if you were in the room with them, like I am, this would be talk enough. I suppose I could just sit here holding them nice and close. I'd give you a really good talk. There's a koan that says all things are sharing the Dharma, teaching the Dharma. These are obviously no exception. Okay, but I am sort of supposed to open my mouth, so I'm going to do that in time-honored tradition. Okay, so let's see. Thank you very much again for all being here, participating in this great retreat. Actually, very, very magical. I don't know whether you've been feeling it, but I feel just sitting together. A good number of us sitting together in stillness and in quiet. It's kind of magical around the world, our little web. Hey, by the way, am I loud enough? Okay, thank you. Now, first thing I want to say actually is that I had this sort of slight sense that somehow, just a little bit, the talks on this session, through my own doing entirely, have just taken us a little bit off the kind of central track, the main sea road, the vessel called Mountain Cloud, called Sambo Zen, really wants to be following. Just a little bit. It doesn't matter, but I woke in the night with sort of just having a sense of that and grabbed a piece of paper and wrote down, I think, 3 or 4 key points that I thought, this is it. I'll just make these points and everything will come together in a perfect sort of summing up of the retreat and propelling us forward out of the retreat, so that all this little bit of drift that I've allowed to happen will be sort of brought together. And I sort of scribbled these points down with my flashlight, went back to sleep, and I can't find it, that piece of paper. so that's sort of problem number 1. Problem number 2 is that actually one of the reasons this sort of drift has happened is that I am shamelessly making excuses here, is that I actually have been suffering sort of unevenly, sometimes really not at all really, and then other times more so from these post-concussion symptoms. Mostly they're just getting better and better, but unfortunately there was a little collision of symptoms and talk time the last time I gave a talk. And I hope none of you noticed, but I knew that I wasn't really holding the reins very well. And anyway, so with that said, excuses made, I now want to do my best to sort of try to pull things together. And I'm actually I actually wrote something this morning to try to sort of remember what I've been trying to say in my lost notes. I know I didn't quite get it, but still, this is something I want to share with you. You know, I feel it's been an unusual retreat a little bit, with a little drift like an ocean swell, carrying us away from standard mountain cloud fare, just a little bit. And on the one hand, I'm a little, you know, it's too bad a little bit that happened. But at the same time, there is value in going into unknown territory, in having our certainties upset and destabilized somewhat. Now, you definitely don't need to believe in sort of weird shit, you know. That's not what this is about. This is no supernature here. Absolutely not. It's exactly the opposite. It's studying the real order of things and getting more and more intimate with the real order of things. And that means the real order as we know it, but investigating it more deeply than we ordinarily do, so that we find out things about it that we don't ordinarily know. We make discoveries about the real order of things. You know, it's often been said that Shakyamuni was sort of a scientist, you know, sort of experiential scientist. And we all are when we're doing this practice, or we can be. But nevertheless, to soften into the presence of deeper levels of our own unconscious, both individual and shared, collective, letting our sense of the boundary between the known and the unknown dissolve, that's okay. That's good. And it's sort of in that realm that I've been trying to open up this kind of sense of support. Of course, there are other more ordinary kinds of support that are, you know, not weird at all, just straightforward. Most obviously, right now, of course, Sangha. All of us sitting together like this, taking the time for these days to be doing this thing together of not doing, deciding to set aside time to be together, to not do anything. Pretty kind of amazing. Now, you know, one of my teachers actually used to say, and this is apropos, same point really, another aspect of it. She used to say that Zen was shadow work. You know, that's a Jungian term some of you will be familiar with. I mean, it sort of comes from Jung, but I'm sure it's traveled beyond Jung. And she said it was shadow work in that it involves opening up the shadow, the unconscious, all that we don't know about ourselves. And the shadow contains not only sort of bad stuff, but treasures. You know, it's kind of it's essential, I think, to our healthy growth, actually. So when we sit, we're not only supposed to be having marvelous times, you know, we're supposed to be opening, receiving, softening into what arises. That's healthy. And there's a place, actually, for this kind of, could we call it soul work, as some Jungians call it, James Hillman, and I don't know how many of you follow this kind of stuff, but Robert Johnson, James Hillman, many others, you know. And what the real thing about it is kind of, I would say, opening up a zone of deeper feeling beneath the surface turbulence of our lives, stresses, anxieties, irritations, there's this sort of soul realm, as it's sometimes called. It's like a deeper sense of self, but sort of deeper. That's more loving, has more heartbreak, more yearnings, more tenderness, and more connection. It's more connective, this sort of soul self. And it has this sense of seeming to know its place in the world more deeply. And it's more creative and compassionate in its ways of living. So I've been sort of somehow trying to drive at that. And that's that's the realm where, you know, these sort of archetypal figures and so on, you know, are waking up, you know, in dreams. Dreams is a big zone of this, but there are others too. And sitting is a softening, dissolving, opening, becoming more porous to all this kind of stuff that I'm talking about. So now I wanted to make this point in this retreat particularly because it's dualistic. Yes, it is still about some sense of self. And it's actually important to state that because, you know, there are people who get into this kind of stuff who think it's the end of the road. And it can be. I mean, it's fine. If you want it to be the end of the road, it's the end of the road. It's fine, no problem. But it's not the end of the road as far as a practice that's concerned with awakening goes. So sort of, you know, you see the sort of two sides here. It's good to have this kind of dualistic thing open up. It's still dualistic, but opening that up. Very, very important, really, valuable for our growth as humans. But on the other hand, let's be clear that it is still dualistic, if you see what I mean. So it's not, we can't really give it the label awakening. Things will get confused if we do. Okay, so now, having said all that, I want to now come to sort of the big matter, really. Support. Ordinary support, slightly weirder support that Henry's been banging on about, but it doesn't matter. Support. Getting this sense that practice is something we sort of do and we know, and also there's another current carrying us that is not what we know and even not what we do, but it's sort of being invoked by the fact that we're practicing. Again, maybe sounds a bit weird, but actually it's not really weird. It's for real, you know, and it's to do with probably simply that as we hopefully grow and change, we just experience the world differently. So the person at the hub of experience is changing. It's like and therefore the landscape looks different, you know, around us. See what I mean? That it's not just we're not a fixed thing. Of course we're not. And as we grow and change and develop, what things look like around us change. The landscape's not fixed. It's constantly sort of changing as we change. So there's that support of these different kinds. You know. Now the question really is twofold. One, well, what exactly are we being supported in? Toward what are we being supported? You know, what, just sort of staying alive? I mean, there's that, of course, breath, food, etc. But what's that project? What are we being supported in? And then, of course, there's the second question that comes out of that is basically, who exactly is it being supported? So I want to look at a koan. I've been sort of holding off with great self-discipline, holding off from koans, because I wanted to convey that you don't have to have kensho in order to get value, immense value, out of your sitting practice. There's been a tendency in Western koan Zen, I think it's fair to say, to put an awful lot of emphasis on kensho, on awakening experiences. And it's fair enough. You know, we hear about it, it sounds sort of amazing. I want to taste that, you know, and some folks have tried psychedelics and it sounds a little bit like that, but the psychedelics are just drugs that induce it, and they're not really like that anyway. It's not really like kensho. And so the idea of sort of like drug-free drug experience is an intoxicating prospect. But let me tell you, it's way better than any psychedelic experience. I don't know a whole lot about psychedelic experience, but I have done a little bit, like ayahuasca, you know, it was, but very, very powerful hallucinogen. Horrible, actually. I don't recommend it, but it was very, very interesting and very helpful. And I mean, there's a place for these things as medicines. I think, you know, I'm not doing them down, but I think it's extremely rare that somebody has a kensho experience or anything really like it in the midst of a drug experience. But I think it can happen also. I've heard of it 2 or 3 times in my privileged role as a Zen guide. So it's possible, but you know, you still haven't got a clear head. You've got this, you know, this thing messing with your neurology. Wouldn't it be nice to have this kind of infinite clarity, boundlessness show itself with a clear mind? Wouldn't that be better? Well, it's possible, but it's not 100% predictable. We can't guarantee it, you know. The only thing we can say is, if you step into the Zen arena in a lineage that knows about this and sort of, in a sense, can guide us toward it and then beyond it, deeper and deeper and clearer, ever deeper, ever clearer, then there's a possibility. Of course, I mean, the possibility goes up, for sure. It's not fanciful to be kind of aspiring in that kind of way, but it isn't definite. See what I mean? It's just, so therefore, I've been wanting to really emphasize these other aspects of practice that are very much more predictable, controllable, likely to arise if you sit diligently and follow a path of practice. So it's not like kensho or bust. No. There's a whole lot of value with nothing to do with kensho. Nothing to do with it. Whole lot of value. And in fact, people who may sort of have kensho early may have a deficit if they still need to do this more sort of normal human work to be a you know, more complete human being. If you have too much only kensho, only awakening, you know, it's out of balance, and you're not gonna be as complete and whole. You have to have sort of, we're multi-dimensional, multi-level beings, and it's not okay to only wake up. I mean, you probably know all this. It's commonly said, you got to wake up. Fine, if you do, you do, but you've also got to grow up. That's, you know, maturing. Much more important, really. If you do that, forget the waking up, doesn't matter. And then you got to clean up. This is Ken Wilbur I'm quoting now, who some of you will know. Wake up, fine, fine, fine if you must. Grow up though, and clean up. So I'm trying to sort of, these first two retreats kind of emphasize that side of our development. Okay, now, yeah, okay. Yeah, we're about to go to the koan. But just to be clear, my view is that this is essentially Mountain Cloud and RGMI and our project, Sambo Zen, I think too, is a little bit more like a gym than anything else. It's a zone, a place where you can come for specific kinds of training. It's not physical, obviously. It's, well, a little bit of that with the sitting, but it's mostly developing and training attention. And through that, discovering new kinds of awareness, new levels of awareness, which in turn bring more compassion and love and, frankly, enjoyment and more appreciation. And also bring, let's hope in time, more wisdom. So these things are all being developed in this zone. That's what it's about. It's not about signing on for anything magical or supernatural. So just reaffirming that. Okay, now let us go to this wondrous artifact, thing, device, upaya, skillful means, a koan. Very, very amazing thing. Yeah. About remembering what are we being supported in, and who's being supported. Here's the koan. It's case 74 of the Book of Equanimity, and it's Hogan's form and name. Here's how it goes. A monk asked Hogan, I hear that a sutra says, from the basis of non-abiding, all dharmas are established. What is this basis of non-abiding? Hogan answered, form arises from what has no form yet. Name comes from what has no name yet. Okay, that's the koan. I'm going to sort of translate a little bit these terms. I don't want to go too much into the background. Well, just these words, this dialogue. From the basis of non-abiding, all dharmas are established. Well, what is, first of all, a dharma? The dharma has two meanings, essentially. One is teachings, basically the teachings of the Buddha, and then their reiteration in various forms down the centuries, the teachings of the way of awakening, Buddhism. But secondly, dharma means law, something like natural law. So it's commonly actually taken to mean something like the law of causation, the law of cause and effect, by which all things arise. So the natural law is the law, once again, by which everything, each thing arises, just as it is. That's dharma, but also the things themselves are dharma, because they're expressing the law of causation. So, your little fingernail, the nail of your little finger is dharma. It's both a thing caused by the law of causation, and it's the very sort of manifestation of the law of causation. These flowers are, each of them, each petal, each stamen, each, I don't know, whatever, little tiny part of the stamen is dharma. It is a dharma and it is the dharma, both. If you want to know the law of cause and effect. You know, this is it. This is it. Dharma. This old friend is it. This beautiful, beautiful friend of mine. Very, very good friend. Dharma. Very, very supportive friend. One of my best friends. Dharma. Not to mention this hand. Dharma. Now, so it says, all things, let's translate it that way, all things arise or are established, supported by what? The basis of non-abiding. But what's the basis of non-abiding? Non-abiding means not living, not staying, not resting, not dwelling, non-dwelling, sort of basically non-existing. All things are supported by this basis, this support they all rest on. What is that support? It's non-abiding, non-dwelling. Why is it non-dwelling? This basis. I don't know if you can get that. Why is it non-dwelling? I mean, I could say, a little hint. We all know the sort of, principles of kind of atomic physics for the lay person, that an atom, if you blew it up to the size of the world, of the earth, it's what is it, nucleus, the heart of the atom would be 60 feet wide in diameter. And the electron going around it would be 20 feet wide in diameter. If you blew it up to the size of planet Earth, that's what it would consist of. A little nugget in the middle and a smaller nugget orbiting it on the surface of the Earth. And what's the rest of the atom? Space. Just space. And, we further know that you can break down those particles into subatomic particles. And if you keep breaking them down, they get stranger, till you end up with the boson, Higgs boson, and the boson field. And what's matter? What's matter? What are we made of? There's one student, former student of mine in Germany, who told me that her father was a physicist and did this kind of work. And he told her that if you took the atomic matter of your own body, it would be less than a teaspoonful of matter. And if you poured that teaspoonful into the palm of your hand, it would fall straight through your hand. I suppose it would fall straight through the floor as well. I don't know how far it would go. Would it come out on the other side of the world? I don't know. But that's what we're made of. Now, what is this basis of non-abiding? Why is it non-abiding? Because it's non-existing. Forms arise out of non-existing. He says it very clearly when he's asked the question. Hogan responds, forms, things. This wall comes from what has no form, what can't have form, or what doesn't have form. It comes out of this hand, comes from what has no form. So all of this realm that we occupy, that our total life goes on in, it's, in this language, coming out of essentially nothing, coming out of non-form. Same thing with name, Henry, wall, desk, window, tree, sky. What are they coming out of? Basis of non-abiding. Nothing. Coming out of non-dwelling. This is the wonder. Now, why is it a wonder? Because everything participates in it. Everything is that. That's why we can talk about oneness. It's because everything is coming from non-abiding. But, of course, that language isn't correct. It's not just coming from it. It is it, even as it arises, as it shows itself. Phenomena means showing in Greek. Phaino, I show, I appear. Phenomena are appearances. It's a Buddhist word. Appearances. Exactly. This is an appearance. This is an appearance. This is an appearance. An appearance. What's it made of? Basis of non-abiding. Like everything, one basis, shared by all things. That's why it's a wonder, because it's shared. That's why I was talking about in the first talk of this retreat. Greater good. What are we here for? We're here to find and to serve this greater good. Why is it greater? Because it's all. Why is it good? Because it's all. Everything together. One body. One, community. One sangha. Joined by the basis of non-abiding. That's why it's good. That's why it's greater. Okay? Greater and good. Fair enough? Can we accept that? That's why I'm calling it original love. Because it's giving. It's this sort of, could be called original generosity. Original creativity. Everything is that origin. Everything is that basis of non-abiding. But that doesn't mean that each thing isn't exactly what it is. That's exactly how this law of causation, this basis of non-abiding, functions. By being you. By being each of us. By being, Sunday morning in New Mexico and probably Monday evening in Australia or whatever it is, That's how it's functioning. And Sunday afternoon in Devon, that's how this functions. It's being all these things all at once, and they're all it. That's the basis of non-abiding. That's the greater good. Okay, have I conveyed that? Is this coming across? I see a couple of sort of nods. Okay, so I don't know. I hope. I hope. Now, but do you see the importance? Like, if you think that's all practice is about, you might leave aspects of yourself untilled, untended, unpastured, undeveloped. Very easily. It's heady stuff, So Henry's saying, let's not do that. Let's tend the human stuff, please, the dualistic human stuff, as well. I mean, you can disagree, and of course you're free to do whatever you want to do. But that's what I'm trying to offer, is a way that we don't neglect our human realm because we get so into, awakening. It's marvelous. It's utterly marvelous to find this all-relieving oneness. Because there's no relief is needed when you find it. And obviously, I think I made this clear, I hope, no support is possibly needed. There can be no support, but actually you don't need it. What support can you need when you're all? Support is necessarily dualistic, too. And this reality just doesn't do that. But it's because it's real, somehow we're drawn towards it and we get little nudges and helps and hints. Support in finding it. Why bother? Because when we discover that, it's a total reorientation. It's as big as from the old Earth geocentric view to the sun-centric view, except it's bigger because there's not even a sun at the center. It's just one center everywhere. Did he follow that? Was that too quick? You know, the old days was Earth was at the center and everything went around us. Then we got to sun was the center. Everything goes around the sun, well, our solar system. But this Dharma takes us beyond that. Everything is the center. Everything is the center. I mean, that's pretty mind-blowing. Don't try to get your mind around it. You can taste it through this practice. How? Mu. Sit with Mu. You can find it with Mu. So that's our sort of, purpose of support. Now, what's the purpose actually of finding this? Well, you could say it's true. It's unto itself. It's thoroughly unto itself. It has its own utter fulfillment, so no purpose is needed. Fair enough. But, and that's true, by the way. That's actually the real reality. But we're living in this world. It's all very well, this optimistic idea of the 60s, 70s, 80s. If you want to change the forest, change each tree. If we tend to ourselves and our own clarification, the forest will change. But what if the forest is being managed by incompetent people who have no idea how to manage a forest? How much is it going to help that each of us do our work? We have to do our work, but we really are in a place now that we can't think that's enough. And I think the more this fruits of practice become clear to us, the more we realize that, we are we're part of all, and we're also part of a nation and a society. I just want to, the point I'm going to here is that there's no point finding this greater good if we don't then serve greater good in all senses of the word. It's like we are embodied creatures. We are empty space, and we are embodied, and we have no form, and we are form. And this is a vast world of nothing, and it's a vast world of people and beings and societies. I'm going to just read you, I want to read you a little bit more of, the priest I was reading from at the start of this retreat, Christina Rathbone. She's saying here, but there is more. This is a few days later in Juarez. Young Daniel, if you remember this boy Daniel she met, young Daniel found me again. He showed none of the excitement of the rest of the community. 3 families had just managed to get through the US border from Juarez into El Paso. So they're all excited, the rest of the community hopeful, but not Daniel. He was serious, almost somber. He asked if I would come to his mother's tent. I don't know whether they've come from Salvador or Honduras or Mexico, but there's a family, the mum and 2 kids, and the dad has been in America for years, and they've been trying to join it. And Daniel is an 11-year-old boy, actually, and he asked if I would come to his mother's tent, and when I agreed, he led me through the garbage bag flap that served as a door, with that strange combination of intimacy and formality he'd shown me the day before when we met, and then settled on a flattened piece of cardboard next to his mother. I sat down opposite him, straight-backed as he was, still and silent as he was. Then he began to speak. His bracelet, the one Judy had given me and I then gave him, was still wrapped round his wrist, and he fiddled with it every now and then. Otherwise, he was entirely still, except his words, which flowed unobstructed from his core, through his mouth, out to me. His mother was still scared, he said in the same direct, deep-eyed way as yesterday. So scared that she wanted to return to their home. But he did not want to return. He wanted to wait. He wanted to stay here and then to cross over and finally to see his father, because he had only communicated with his father on the phone since he was 6 years old, and that was not right. How old are you now? I asked then, as gently as I could. I'm 11 years old, he said, as if it was essential that I understood. His mother smiled at me then and scooped up his little sister from the other side of the tent. Very quietly, as if not wanting to interrupt, she tucked herself and her daughter under the black plastic flap and left, giving us both the space and Daniel the privacy to talk. And he did talk, fluently, evenly, and entirely without passion or pause, about his deepest hopes and his deepest fears, until it became clear that what he feared most was exactly what was going to happen. They were returning home, he said. His father had already sent money for the bus tickets, and they were leaving tomorrow at noon. There was no work for his mother to do there, back where they were going, and the school had long ago closed because no one let their children out of their houses anymore. Not since kids, little kids, he said, started being kidnapped. Not since then. It was true that his father called regularly when they were home, but every time he did, his parents fought. She thought he had a new woman. He insisted he was only working hard, struggling to pay the rent and eat and keep his car going and send money home. And then they'd start screaming at each other, and his mother would hang up the phone, and again, he, Daniel, would have lost the chance to speak to his father. And he didn't like that, and he didn't want that, and he didn't think that was right. He needed to be able to speak freely to his father, and they needed him with them to be safe. This was why they were here now, to try to find safety. And they were so close, just across the bridge from the United States. All they had to do was wait a little more until their number was called. The border guards are calling out family numbers. And most of them, by the way, don't get through. But his mother was too afraid of the night, afraid of the community, afraid of detention, afraid of America. She did not need to be afraid, but she was. He wanted to wait and believed waiting was the right thing to do. Otherwise, one day, maybe soon, and maybe not so soon, but for sure one day, they would just have to start this journey over again. Because one thing was clear to all of them, they needed to be safe. And to be safe, they needed to be together. This was what was important for his sister and him, to have a mother and a father, and for them to be together, safe where they lived, without having to worry about being kidnapped or being shot or being hurt. And this was important for his mother also. He'd had dreams about he and his sister going to school in America, he said then, but that would not happen now. And with that, the words stopped. He had said all that he had to say. Neither of us moved. He sat still, and so did I. It was my turn to speak, I knew, and I had no idea what to say. His life was making a U-turn away from what he longed for and towards what he dreaded, and there was nothing in the world he could do about it. Not a single thing. So what in the world could I possibly say? Quietly, evenly, I took a deep breath and did what I always do when I don't have a clue. Simply opened my mouth and trusted. Sometimes life is very, very hard. I heard myself say, during these times, everything that is hardest and worst and most wrong feeling is what happens. And when we're children, there's nothing we can do about it, which is terrible and painful and maybe even wrong. But it isn't the end of the story, I said. You are 11 now, and one day, not too far away, you will be a young man. And then you can make your own choices and live your own life. If you still want to, you can return here to the border and try to reunite with your father, or live your life in whatever way you think best. Whatever you decide, though, the truth is that there is something extraordinary inside you. I told him again, touching the place where his heart was, something truly extraordinary. And while that might make things more difficult for you now, it will make things possible in years to come. And you will do amazing things, Daniel, not for yourself only, but for your family, for your country, for both of your countries, perhaps. And one thing more, Daniel, don't ever forget what I'm telling you. You are extraordinary. You have everything you need deep within you. And you only need to wait a few more years before you start being and becoming the person you were born to be. And I nodded and he nodded. And as mysteriously as it had started, it finished. There was nothing more to say. I don't remember now how I left the tent or what happened then, between then and the time I got home. All I really know is that Daniel, who is all of us, is alive, right here and right now, in a tent made of garbage bags, on the edge of the Santa Fe Bridge, in Ciudad Juarez, in the heat. And that Daniel, who is all of us, is yet again on the way to a place he does not wish to go. Please, why don't we I know practice can be hard, but it is also a great privilege to be able to do it. Why don't we try our best to be the support that's needed, where it's needed? Thank you so much. As this is the last talk, why don't we do 3 bows? If you want. No worries if you'd rather not.